Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the exposure of the Pilgrims Society. How are you today, War Hamster?
I am doing really, really well. I'm back and finally get my routine. The first thing I do when I wake up is exercise, and it just gives me extra energy. So I'm
We
getting back
don't,
on.
we don't need extra energy.
I did it. Yeah, I tell you what, that fractured hip I did over the winter really kicked my butt. So I've got a long ways to come back to normal, but doing good. The notorious Pilgrims and how they got their grubby little hands on just about everything. All right, so I'm minding my own business this morning, and I go to a website sometimes called Twitchy, and Twitchy features some really what's the word I'm getting? Whatever the big news on Twitter is of the day, and they'll read some of the captions. And what do I get greeted with? You want to share that? They feature a tweet by none other than Colonel Towner-Watkins,
Well, that's impressive.
which she put out there. Hey, do you see how many views you got on this? It's like 750K.
Oh, wow. That's a
I
lot.
read this whole thing, and Colonel, you guys got to go read this on the Colonel's timeline. But she talks about Trump's speech last night and draws a conclusion. This requires the same organizations, DHS, CIA, FBI, etc., that committed treason to launch investigations of their own organizations, which from my experience inside government never works. It's my opinion that we have moved to another phase of the operation. The speed will increase exponentially. The part that really gets me is at the bottom, the Twitchy writer says, yeah, but if he's right, meaning you. So Twitchy doesn't know, can't define a woman, I guess, today. But I thought that was pretty fantastic, and it touches on our subject for today.
And, I have to say this because I say it every time. I'm not sure what part of a hyphenated name people don't understand.
Well, here's the problem: is you're seeing, especially in the Black community, you're seeing a lot of professional athletes that are taking their mother's name and hyphenating their names.
Yes, but that is such a small percentage that you would think that, thank you, Amanda. And you would think that people would, at least with a hyphenated name, say, hey, but I understand it's something that's happened my entire career. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, I thought you'd find it, but it's because it's touched on immigration, and that's just our subject today, and that's why everybody we were gonna jump into Churchill and some of the other older pilgrims. And once again, the Pilgrims Society is an Anglo-American society designed to increase American and English relations through diplomacy, military, business, and the media. Without a doubt, the media and education, but the media was a big part of it too. And it's interesting to me because every American ambassador to the Court of St. James, which is they call our embassy there, supposed to have, basically taken an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, not to work in Britain's interests. And to me, the very definition of this thing is pretty darn treasonous. So the reason we switched subjects is because the Colonel was beating some people up on Twitter over this concept that we've all seen in the news a bunch, that it doesn't matter where you're from. If you get arrested, you're listed as white. And that's got a lot of implications, but I'll let you tell the real history of it and why that happened. And that'll kind of segue us into our topics.
So obviously, in ancient history, there were basically whites, blacks, and African American and Native Indians in the United States. That's primarily what we were. At some point in the 1970s, it was decided we needed a little more delineation. We had started expanding the immigration pool. And so basically they came up with 5 or 6 categories. We had, for the first time, Pacific Asian, Asian, and Black, white, Alaskan natives, and then basically native Indians. And that was the way it was for the next until about 2024. And because of a mounting need to delineate government-wide. Now, and I want to make very clear that whatever the federal government dictates, because of their assimilating power that is unwarranted, they are allowed to dictate to state and local governments what data is collected. And so over time, the federal government saw the need to be more specific as far as race goes. And that's what happened in the 1970s. And so when the federal government does that, it applies to everything. It applies to loan applications. And the way they stack it is race first, then ethnic group. So if you select white and you want to further delineate your ethnic group among white, you have several choices, of which is Hispanic, Indian, like from India, and several other choices. And that was applicable to the military. And so again, when I became a personnel officer in the late 1980s, I thought that was totally weird that you have somebody that's obviously Hispanic. And so I did the research. And it was then because they track promotions based on race and ethnic category. The higher up in the officer rank you get, the more stratification they demand. And then in the 90s, when Clinton came in, they were really pushing promoting minorities in the military. So this is and again, I was responsible for doing those charts and doing statistics and all kinds of things like that. So this is kind of my wheelhouse, if you will. I know what the laws are. And I had a friend of mine just recently in the last few years that was at Air Force recruiting. And he is Hispanic by background. You wouldn't know it by looking at him. But he battled with that all the time because at that point, Biden was in office and that became like his full-time job. And he was responsible for allocating recruiters in different areas. And the mandate came down that said they wanted Hispanic recruiters in Hispanic areas. They wanted Black recruiters and he fought against that because that's contrary to everything in the military. Everything is colorblind. And so again, him and I had lots of conversations about this. So that's why I'm so adamant about this entire topic, because I've spent decades embroiled in this topic. And so now shift gears into how I understand how they use these types of mechanisms to separate us and to agitate people. And recently I saw the one account who had just set up their account the first few days of July and immediately started driving this wedge in that without doing any research at all. And it became very clear to me he's another agitator. And now, because of the traction that he got with his agitation, there are multiple accounts doing the exact same thing without any context at all. So in 2024, Congress actually passed a law that is not mandatory until 2029 that stratifies race significantly different. Now,
when was that passed?
In 2024.
Okay.
And so for those of us who know anything about how changes to computer systems and governments work, they basically don't own any of their own computer systems anymore. They are created by contractors. And so you have to go through an entire appropriation cycle in Congress in order for them to fund the money. So this was done outside of the normal budget cycle. So you have to wait almost another year for them to appropriate the money to fix all of the computer systems, and they do it through grants. So then once the entity gets, whether it's a state or a county or a city, once they get the appropriated money, then they have to go through their own budget cycle to contract that out. So you're 2.5 years into an implementation before you ever even get to talk to a contractor. And once they do that, you can't just let them play around in your database. You have to create the modification to the database. You have to safety test it. And then you have to basically take your entire database, save it in case it crashes. Then you have to run the new parameters. And then you actually have to, and that's provided they don't crash. Many of them do. Trust me, I know this. And then if they crash, they have to go back and tweak it, whatever. Then once you get all of that done, then you can make your database live. Then you have to test it with the feed into the federal system, make sure that operates. And then and only then will the federal database be reflective of this new thing. And that's not even mentioning all of the retraining that you have to do on all of the actual data inputters, because this isn't something. When you arrest somebody and you bring them into your jail, somebody actually has to enter that data. And so it is a very lengthy process, which is why they always give 5 years. That's what I've noticed. Some is even longer than that. But
government efficiency at its finest.
Yes.
I mean, you're making a great argument for limited government. So I agree.
I know. And so anybody that has operated inside of that system understands that it is about a 5-year. And let me just say this, governments love to get that money in year 1 and then not spend it until year 4 so that they cram to the last minute in order to meet their deadline. And there will be states that ask for waivers and stuff like that. So that's just the way the government works, like it or not. And so anybody that you see out there posting about that crap, they're doing it. You can just consider it, whether they're doing it knowingly or not, whether they're doing it for money, for clicks, or whether they're doing it as part of an actual operation to drive narratives. Just understand that's their purpose, because the one guy, he actually responded to me and acknowledged the fact that he did know that. And he continues to do it. At that point, you're an operative.
I can understand someone innocently thinking this could be flipped with a switch and get it fixed. It's obviously the place it was put in, for malevolent purposes. We know that the FBI was using those bad crime statistics to drive the narrative that white supremacists are the biggest security threat in the country, and we know that's not true. And if we most certainly do need accurate crime data, because demographics matter, and you can spot it. We know what the trends are, but the data needs to back it up. So it's a big deal. And one of the things you said that really I want you to remember later in the show is you talked about Clinton putting in these DEI policies right around 1992 or 3. We're going to come back. We are definitely going to come back to that theme. Anyways, when the Colonel was writing about that stuff, because the immigration topic is really hot right now, I thought we'd go into see how that impacted the Pilgrims. And there's a Pilgrim who's more recent that I wanted to jump ahead to today. Just one. And he's going to take up the entire day. So,
okay.
And by the way, everyone, I usually brief the Colonel on what the lesson outline is going to be so she can do her own homework. On a hunch, I just figured today's show would go better without, because I like to see her. I like it when she's surprised. And there's some really good ones here. And she's going to have plenty to add. It's not going to be a monologue by any stretch. But with no further ado, let's get into our pilgrim of the day. I just couldn't wait to get to him. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Peter Sutherland, who you should know, and everyone should. Why is Peter Sutherland so important that we skip Winston Churchill to get to him? Well, because he's known as the father of globalization, which is kind of a big title. Peter is born in Dublin, Ireland, educated at Gonzaga College in Dublin, graduates in civil law at the University College in Dublin, practices law from 1969 to 1980. Did I say he was born in 1946? Okay. So pretty boring life so far. 1973, he had run in the general election as a Fine Gael candidate, which is a center-right, described as a center-right liberal conservative Christian Democratic Party, which it's a bit of a word salad there. It doesn't tell you a whole lot. Well, you know, what they consider center-right over there is probably a lot further to the left than, you know, we think.
Actually,
anyway,
most of those Christian Democrats were the party that the CIA backed throughout Europe. But go ahead.
Yeah, that would fit. That fits. So he gets appointed to be the Attorney General of Ireland in 1981 and 82, and then again from 82 to 84. He's the guy who drafted the 1983 amendment bill that inserted the constitutional ban on abortion in Ireland. Still pretty boring, right?
Mm-hmm.
He gets appointed to the European Commission in 1985, the EC. This is the predecessor of the European Union. And he's actually the youngest ever EU commissioner. I believe he would have been 39 at the time. His job with the EU, the EC, he's responsible for competition policy and education for a little while. He proposed what is known as the Erasmus program. Erasmus. This allows European university students to study in other member states. The borders are coming down. This is 1985. The Berlin Wall has not come down yet, but Europe's starting to talk about this European Union and the Commission. Obviously, the Erasmus program is named after a famous scholar, Erasmus of Rotterdam, who was one of the philosophers we talked about, Dutch philosopher who had a lot of good things to say. He's a Renaissance humanist. Anyway, while he's on the European Commissioner, he's the chairman committee that produced something called the Sutherland Report. And that's about the completion of the internal market of the European Economic Commission. That's a big deal, people. That was the next step towards a joint currency of the EU.
Yep.
And this report would be presented to the European Council in 1992. Was that about Clinton in 92?
Right.
All right.
Well, can we tie this back to the Fabians? Because you're talking about the merging of economics, and that's basically with the Milner Group, the London School of Economics, and all that other stuff, that's the step number one for the erasure of sovereignty.
Yeah, and we've been talking about, the Gladio style. There's no right, there's no left. It's the strategy of tension and everything like that. And we've been kind of going back and forth. And you kind of teed me up for one of the things I wanted to talk about today. The Fabians were most certainly going to be far left. I mean, the way we call the political left today. The Pilgrims are a more fascist type of group, but it's not right wing. That's a different version of leftism. And we'll go into this deeper. But sometime in the 1970s, these two different ideas started to blend together.
Yes.
And that's where we are today. And when we go through Sutherland, it's really going to rear its ugly head. And we'll talk about that. Because remember, this guy's the father of globalization. And he joins it, and he's belonging to the Pilgrims Society, which is about Anglo-American. And those are kind of would seem to be in a contradiction, right?
But they never are.
That's the big trick that makes us think that fascism's on the right. It is not.
Correct.
All governments to the left all the authoritarian governments are on the left, and the free ones are on the right. This is individual liberty versus tyranny. These are just different flavors of tyranny. Under a fascist system, these oligarchs want to maintain control and they want to socialize the losses and privatize the profits. Under socialism, they want to basically run everything, state-owned everything. That's the only difference. It's just, whether the oligarchs, are commissars or whether they're, CEOs. All right, let's keep going with Peter because he gets interesting now. Boring Peter. He then serves on what's called the Delors Commission. That is named after Jacques Delors, His Excellency, who was the president of the European Commission for about 10 years off and on. So the people who work directly under him are called the Delors Commission. He's a Frenchman, born in 1925 to 2023. So he's not going to be a pilgrim because he'd have to be English for that. But he's many other things. His background in the 1940s through 60s, he worked in French banking. A lot of that was state planning, a lot of socialized banking, public-private finance type stuff. He was a bureaucrat. He was a member of the French Confederation of Christian Workers. He participated in the secularization and the foundation of the French Democratic Confederation of Labor.
Ooh, little Fabian tie.
I thought the Christian Workers was interesting too. He's a member of the French Socialist Party. He had actually stepped down after the French Confederation when he joined the government to avoid the conflict of interest. But he is a member of the French Socialist Party. He becomes the social affairs advisor to Gaullist Prime Minister Jacques Chaban-Delmas in 1969.
Whoa.
And that's interesting because Gaullists would be considered right-wing, even though they're in the left. But that really showed his ability to work across the political aisle. And work with center ground. I mean, that's kind of his reputation. He becomes a member of the European Parliament in 1979 through 81, and then he becomes France's finance minister in 1981 to 84. From that, he gets elected the president of the European Commission. So this is a banker and a bit of a politician, but he's going to be the president of the European Commission. You bring that in if you want to do something that related to banking or global banking, right? And he's the guy, he plays the key role in creating the European single market, the Eurodollar, and the evolution of the EEC into the modern European Union under the Maastricht Treaty of 1992. He's got three key themes of his leadership. Number one, he says, from the left came support for redistribution of wealth and protection of the weakest. That's your guy who founded the EU. Number two, he talks about neo-mercantilist approach designed to maximize European industrial output. That's the fascist side.
Mm-hmm.
So the European Union is a blending of the Fabian vision and the fascist vision. And the last thing he says, we have to have a reliance on the marketplace, even though we're going to interfere in the marketplace and have it screw up because it's got false signals. He contrasted this to what was called neoliberalism across the pond of Reagan, and that's a pretty good comparison. Jacques, he looks like a bureaucrat, doesn't he? A Eurocrat.
Oh, yeah.
He would then chair the UNESCO Commission on Education for the 21st Century.
To brainwash everybody.
Reminder that UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. We have this international body that wants to tell us what to think, how to learn, and they're going to give us all kinds of little things handed down through that. through our NGOs and our institutions that created the woke cult.
They create the blueprint for globalization.
Yeah, and UNESCO was founded in 1945. It was a successor to the League of Nations International Committee on Intellectual Cooperation. And as we go through the Pilgrims, we'll talk about all the influence on the founding of the League of Nations that came from the Pilgrims. And again, that was one of their first attempts at one world government. UNESCO stated aim of promoting world peace and security through international cooperation in education, arts, sciences, and culture. Okay. 1994, the French Socialist Party wanted him to run for president. He said no, and instead founded a center-left think tank called Notre Europe in 1996. He becomes an honorary member of the Institut Aspen of France.
Nothing screams globalist like that.
Like the Aspen Institute. The Aspen Institute in America is a big one. We should probably do a show or two on that at some point. Headquarters are in Manhattan, but there are other branches in Aspen, Colorado. Correct. And it's the who's who. It's a pretty illustrious group of names.
Yes.
And the Institute Aspen France wanted to drive change through dialogue, leadership, and action to help solve the greatest challenges of our time. Why don't they just say they're globalists? We want one world government. Ended. Because they have to dress it up. They're lying to you, people. They have to dress it up with fancy words to make it seem like they're a benign entity. Then he becomes a member of the Club of Rome.
Of course he does.
And that's problematic. Club of Rome was founded in 1968, limited to 100 members. Basically all current or present heads of state or UN administrators. That's the Club of Rome. The reason this matters is because 1972, they did the report called The Limits to Growth. And that's the Malthusian chart, where I could probably dig it up, but we'll do it another time. I've done it before. Human population goes up exponentially, and our ability to produce food goes up linearly. We're going to run out of resources. This was such a huge theme on climate change, global warming. It gave the globalists an excuse. We've got this global catastrophe, so we've got to pass this global socialist stuff. And that's the engine that drives all of this, between the founding of the EU, the one world government, all these United Nations programs, the Club of Rome, which we're going to go to a lot more detail on when we get to the Rockefellers. But it is a big freaking deal. That report gave them an official backing. Now we got credentials behind this theory. And the whole climate change environmentalist movement explodes because the limit to Joe. Very first person to talk about limited resource was John D. Rockefeller in the 1870s, when he warned about peak oil while he had a monopoly on oil. What do you think that did to the prices?
Right.
So there's a reason we diverted over to Mr. Jacques Delors. In 2012, there's a quote from him. If the British cannot support the trend towards more integration in Europe, we can nevertheless remain friends, but on a different basis. I could imagine a form such as a European Economic Area or a free trade agreement. This is building up into the momentum for the Brexit vote.
Yep. And
then last note I have on him is he became the third person to get the title of Honorary Citizen of Europe bestowed upon him. So that is who our hero, Peter Sutherland, is working for at the EEC. One second. Okay, that's what I thought. Sutherland in 1993 becomes the Director General of GATT, the GATT. That's the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which was founded in 1947. Any comments on that?
It was awful.
Yeah, this is
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had a lot of skull and bonesmen that were involved in that. This is basically the carve out of world trade. And with the I guess their mission statement was, in quotes, substantial reduction of tariffs and other trade barriers and the elimination of preferences on a reciprocal and mutually advantageous basis. It is anything but what they just said it was. These trade agreements, and this was the big one for a long time, two countries will get together and they'll carve out the protected industries and leave other tariffs in place. It is crony capitalism at the highest level.
Yep.
All these trade deals are wrapped around this kind of format.
So can I throw out there that this, when you do the research now with this new frame of reference, this is the rebirth of the cartel system that existed prior to World War II, for the dominance of the few.
Yeah, it's a cartel. It's a cartel system. It's a global cartel system that's signed into law. That says and it creates the corruption in government, because now, if you're a multinational corporation, you don't have a choice but to lobby Congress and spend a whole lot of money to make sure they get you favorable terms in these trade deals. Prior to these trade agreements, we basically would do this, send Sullivan and Cromwell over, and then we, do our private coups. But, this is Operation Gladio laid up. They do it economically first.
Yeah.
And if they have to, then they go to the bag of dirty tricks.
Yeah, the kinetic. Yeah. Yeah. And this is economic warfare.
Without a doubt. So 1963, the ministers of the GATT agreed on, these are quotes, measures for the expansion of trade of developing countries as a means of furthering their economic development. Yeah, sounds really benign, guys. How's that worked out since 63?
It's extortion of third world countries.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we talked about this one of the very first shows we did when we talked about the corporate side of Gladio.
Yeah.
And you've got these ISDs, investment state dispute settlements. This is one of the very first shows the Colonel and I did, because we had to show the economic side to Gladio. And this is GATT. That's what it's all about. And we've got this guy, Pilgrims Society, is leading the way. He's the Director General of GATT.
Yes.
They talked about reduction or elimination of tariffs and other barriers to trade. People, this is not free trade. This is rigged trade.
Yes.
They talk about measures for access to markets for agricultural and other primary products. Access
to markets.
How dare you protect your own people?
But that basically means that the other elements of power, like they will withdraw foreign aid, military aid, and all this other stuff unless you agree to it. So these are all elements of power to extort these third world countries.
Yeah, even second world countries, wherever they are, if you want to participate in
the globalist ones.
Yeah, and if you want to participate in the dollar-based global economy, you don't have a choice but to sign on to these agreements.
Correct.
This chart I pulled up here just talks about some of the rounds. Whenever they meet and come, whenever the muckety mucks meet, wherever they are, Geneva, Kennedy, Tokyo, they call it the Geneva round or whatever, and they come to all these agreements. They come out of these rooms all smiling for the cameras. Yes, we made the world a freer place, while their corporate sponsors are rubbing their greedy little hands. And you can see these achievements. Signing of GATT, 45,000 tariff concessions affecting $10 billion of trade. Another 5,000 tariff concessions. These are not tariff concessions. These are deals. This is a fascist setup on a global scale. If I hammer that home enough.
And it's important to note on your chart up there that GATT basically became the World Trade Organization.
Well, yeah, we're going to get there. That's actually where we're going to. Because Sutherland's the guy that did it. 81, they formed what's called the Quadrilateral Group. Remember the Trilateral Commission from the 70s? Well, now they got a quadrilateral, which is the EU, US, Japan, and Canada to influence GATT. So we got the Anglo-American Alliance driving it, and Japan got invited to the party.
or got captured, depending on how you want to look at it.
In 1986, they had the Uruguay round, which was a big deal. It took them like 8 years to get all that stuff passed. They were hoping to expand GATT to new areas, services, capital, intellectual property, textiles, and agriculture. So they pretty much want everything.
Yeah.
1995, as the Colonel State, with Peter Sutherland at the head, the World Trade Organization is created, and GATT is folded into it. 164 member countries. How many countries do we have in the world? Like 195?
Yeah.
Liberia and Afghanistan have since joined since 2018. Syria and Lebanon and Yugoslavia were originally in it, and they have not rejoined since they got kicked out. The interesting, Lebanon and Syria, I find really curious. And this is where they introduced stronger rules-based dispute settlements. It's a rules-based dispute settlement body with binding rulings, meaning if you have a trade contract with a foreign corporation and there's a disagreement, guess what? You have this 3-person panel sitting in Switzerland that's going to tell you what you can do in your own sovereign country. You are signing away your own sovereignty. This is globalism. This is the father of globalization. In 2001, China would be admitted to the WTO. And the idea was to, ready for this, liberalize China through trade. And China gets special privileges because they're still considered to this day a developing nation.
Right.
And anti-dumping rules treat China as a non-market economy. The playing field is tilted so far in China's favor, and we did this in 2001. And Clinton pushed it, and Bush signed it in. So it's both sides of the American aisle. All right.
Further documenting the fact there is no aisle.
So the GATT and WTO have drawn sharp criticism from a true free trade perspective, which is where I come from. I believe the Colonel does too.
Mm-hmm.
Criticism says that one that favors a unilateral, unconditional liberalization based on comparative advantage without government-managed reciprocity, supernatural bureaucracies, or carve-outs for politically connected interests. That's well stated.
Which is the exact opposite of the WTO.
Exactly. Difference is managed reciprocal trade versus unilateral free trade. Not the fake free trade that, they tell us they're giving you free trade right now. Yes, our good friend Matt Arid talks about the British City of London, how their free trade is fake free trade, and he's correct. But there is a third option, and that's unilateral free trade, which the Constitution actually put in place, but we never got to try it thanks to frickin' Hamilton. Sorry. You knew I was going to go there, didn't you?
Yes.
Anything exciting going on in chat?
I'm watching it.
You guys having fun?
Yeah.
All right. Crony capitalism and corporate capture. They have this thing called TRIPS, trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. That word salad basically extended patents, monopoly protections globally. And who benefits from that? Big pharma, patents, any kind of monopoly protections, they're now global. If you're going to exist in the dollar-based, rules-based order. That's what the WTO puts everyone into. Right. And of course, it just distorts markets in favor of connected interests. You don't get pure competition. It's a global cartel system. What the Colonel calls the international syndicate, this is the financial side of it. It is a cartel system.
Yes.
You get tariffs reductions on some goods, but others like agriculture still get distorted. So Sutherland gets into the WTO and completely reshapes the Director General role and elevated the position to it's one that negotiates directly with presidents and prime ministers. Usually you just talk to the ministers. Now this guy said, no, I'm only talking to heads of state. because I am the father of globalization after all, with my smug little smile on my face.
And that's not insignificant, people. Because if you look at a hierarchical organization, that when he's dealing with ministers, that puts him below the power structure. That's the people, if you look at it like the military, that's like the colonel level where you do all the work. And obviously below that, where all the work is done. And then you present it to the head of state. And it would be him in a subordinate role presenting it to the head of state. When he does this, that elevates the World Trade Organization at large to a global power. This is not insignificant. It is basically elevating it, and in many cases above.
You always just cut up that final sentence. Do you want to repeat what you said?
It's elevating him to an equal level than the heads of state in a true globalist fashion.
Friendly reminder: this guy only ran in one election in his life. Is that unelected bureaucrat? Okay, hammer that point home. Good job, Colonel. There's a quote from U.S. Trade Representative Mickey Cantor. I'm going to read this. U.S. Trade Representative Mickey Cantor and others explicitly praised him for this achievement. The WTO noting that without Sutherland's aggressive leadership, media mobilization, and momentum-building tactics, the WTO might not have emerged.
Is that the same Cantor that was Clinton's Secretary of Commerce?
Yeah, he was a U.S. Trade Representative too. Yeah. And I believe he was on the Export-Import Bank as well at one point, wasn't he?
I think so.
Double check that. That is the same guy.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
So while he's doing all this, he's also sitting on boards of a lot of companies in the private sector. Are we hammered the WTO home hard enough? I think we have. All right. Because we could go on.
But let me what you're about to say and highlighting this. So Warhamster just described to you that this guy is setting up for years on end the globalist system.
And the whole time sitting on the boards of directors of some pretty notorious multinational corporations.
So at no time was he doing this as a non-affiliated bureaucrat strictly on the globalist, everybody's going to share in the global pie. He is sitting on boards that have vested interest as their emissary to setting up an organization that will benefit them. Okay, go ahead.
First one of these corporations you may have heard of is known as Goldman Sachs. And I've got to share the screen. Can you pull that up for me? One of my favorite articles of all time, written by Matt Taibbi, who you guys all know from the Twitter files. I met him. I first started following him in 2010. He's writing for the Rolling Stone. It's called The Great American Bubble Machine. It says, from tech stocks to high gas prices, Goldman Sachs has engineered every major market manipulation since the Great Depression, and they're about to do it again. Just going to read this one paragraph because it's my favorite paragraph in literary history. The first thing you need to know about Goldman Sachs is that it's everywhere. The world's most powerful investment bank is a great vampire squid wrapped around the face of humanity, relentlessly jamming its blood funnel into anything that smells like money. I mean, that's it. I think that's just a brilliant sentence. The vampire squid, that's where they got the nickname. In fact, the history of the recent financial crisis, which doubles as a history of the rapid decline and fall of the suddenly swindled dry American empire, reads like a who's who of Goldman Sachs graduates. And this guy is one of them. While he's designing the WTO.
System to move the squid around the world.
I got to go head to head with some Goldman bankers a few times, and one of my proudest moment was little old me sitting on one side of the table, 5 Goldmans on the other, and I won the deal. That was my big feather in my cap. And I've always hated Goldman, so that was really satisfying. All right. What other nefarious multinational corporations would you see on the board for? Oh, he was the non-executive director at British Petroleum. Why does that matter, Colonel?
Well, British Petroleum is another one of those squid vampires.
They're the reason we carved up the Middle East the way we did.
Yes.
He was the director of construction materials conglomerate CRH PLC, and that's interesting because while he was on the board, CRH PLC got fined for its role in a pan-European cement cartel.
Illustrating exactly the point we've been making. They're all cartels.
He's the director of the Royal Bank of Scotland Group, which the United Kingdom government had to take over to avoid bankruptcy during the Great Financial Crisis while he was on the board. Noticing a pattern here?
Yes. Sucking things dry.
And I should pull this up. We should do this real quick. He also sat on the board of directors for Ericsson.
Yeah. This is probably the biggest one, although I understand your focus on Goldman. Ericsson and the Wallenberg ABB is the biggest one.
Indeed. And this is the Ericsson report. This is done by a friend of mine, Michael Ray Corey. I've had him on my channel a couple of times. He's a great guy and a brilliant researcher.
He's awesome.
Good. I'm glad you knew him. I won't go through the whole Ericsson report. I don't want to steal his thunder, but it really talks about how Ericsson, well, first of all, talk about the family, because that's a big deal. You know that stuff pretty well. The Wallenbergs.
So the Wallenberg family, I first came across them in the first year of doing research because I'd never heard of them. And their motto is to be without being seen. And they go back to the Bolshevik Revolution. They go back to World War I, World War II, and they are a force behind all of this. It was their banks that basically reminted all of the Tsar's gold that was then used to pay the oligarchs in the West to, like GE, to electrify the Soviet Union immediately after the Bolshevik Revolution, to build the railroads. Sweden has positioned themselves. And for those of you who follow me and you understand the inner workings of ITT and the International Telephone and Telegraph and Crypto AG and how that permeated and stole all of the information, Ericsson is like the granddad. They're like the infrastructure. They had forever control of all of the information in China during the building out of China. They did the exact same thing in the Soviet Union. They are such a tangled web as far as an octopus goes, and total control of information and all of that stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's really deep stuff. We should probably have Michael on to come talk about this in detail, because he does, obviously, it's his work. But you guys really owe it to yourselves to check out the Ericsson report. And it's a little hard to find online, but keep digging through the links. It took me a while to find it, but our boy is there with it. All right, let me get this out of here. Hang on. There we go. Let's get Mr. We don't need Sutherland up there anymore for now. Oops. Come back here. Okay. He's also on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group up until 2014. He had various, yeah. Like everyone here, everyone who follows us knows who the Bilderberg Group is. But you want to comment on that? But
well, it is one of those behind the scenes networking, world planning for globalism, because it is one of the few of these entities where the press is invited in, but with the sworn oath that they don't reveal anything that's happening in them. And that's a very unique composition.
Okay, so yeah, Bilderberg's a big deal. We will probably end up doing a full show on them at some point. Although that's been pretty well reported on already. I don't know if we have anything new or unique on it.
Just to I think what would be interesting is to overlay some of the people with the Fabians, Pilgrims, and that type of thing. And I can try to work on that, because I do think it would be interesting to overlay how they all line up, because it's all the same people.
Yeah, I've got somebody working on that. Someone reached out to me on Twitter and asked if they wanted me to, if I wanted them to do it. I said, hell yes. I expect it any day now. So, all right. Where am I? Okay, so he doesn't stop at Bilderberg. He had various roles with the World Economic Forum because, of course, he did. World Economic Forum, of course, founded by Klaus Schwab, who once again was a Rockefeller stooge, just like Kissinger and Brzezinski, and Maurice Strong, who started the whole climate change issue. So there's Rockefeller fingerprints on this. And of course, they're going to be supporting all of these things from the WTO. He was the honorary chairman of the Trilateral Commission from 2010 till his death. He was a member of the Hong Kong Chief Executive Council on International Advisors from 1998 to 2005, and I did not get a chance to figure out what the heck that means, because 1998 is when Hong Kong got British turned Hong Kong over to China. So who the heck is he Chief Executive Council for? International Advisors for the new Hong Kong? That's interesting to me.
Well,
I'm going to have to dig up some articles.
Yeah, you talked about how, Ericsson's all throughout China, all of the globalists are offshoring all of their industry into China. So he's the guy that is retrofitting China to move into the globalist network.
That's why they let him in the WTO. Big mistake. What else has he been? 2003, he was a member of the Commission on Human Security, which was set up by Japan. 2005, he's appointed. Go ahead.
Can I go back to the handover of Macau to China?
Sure.
That happened in 2000. You know, Macau is like the best way to describe it is like Cuba before Castro revolution. Macau it's big on every vice in the world. It is one of the biggest concentration of vice in the world. And it's still like that under China.
Well, of course, Chinese the CCP pull-up, remembers, they got to have some place to go to. Got to have their Cuba. Where was I? Oh, in 2005, he's appointed the Goodwill Ambassador to the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. 2006, he gets appointed chair of something called the London School of Economics.
Okay, that's funny.
You know how they've merged? Yeah, see, that's why I didn't want you to cheat ahead. Your reaction in real time is too good.
That's hysterical. So we went from Fabian, kind of Milner group, right down to the London School of Economics, which marry them all up.
2006, he's appointed the consultor of the extraordinary section of the administration of the patrimony of the Apostolic See. Want to
Oh,
know what
good
that means?
God.
Yeah, it means he's a
Catholic.
financial advisor. He's a financial advisor to the Vatican. And this guy receives a papal knighthood in 2008. What do we know about the Vatican's finances?
Money laundering, USA.
We did a whole show on this, people. Go back and look it up. Can't make this stuff up,
So,
can you?
so the guy that set up the entire globalist structure becomes a part of, and this is the oversight, then comes down to the Vatican, who basically runs at least part of the network on the covert side.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
There's a reason I wanted to highlight this guy. And when you started talking about, migration topics, I thought it was just perfect. And this guy couldn't wait.
Yes.
People need to understand this stuff. Okay, here's the coup de grace for our boy Sutherland. In 2006, the United Nations Secretary General was Kofi Annan. Remember him?
Mm-hmm.
He appoints Sutherland as the special representative for migration, where he would serve until 2017. If you look at the immigration numbers, both in Europe and the United States, this is when it starts trickling up. This is the architect of that. He formed what's called the Global Forum on Migration and Development, and in quotes, to help governments better understand how migration can benefit their development goals. Nice fancy words.
So wait a minute. He married basically what we think of as USAID with migration.
Yeah.
Development?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. He
That's a good way.
married. Yes.
I thought you were going to say he was going to talk about his wife, who I didn't even mention, but she's from Spain or something like that. I didn't find her important, but no, that's a really good way of summing it up. It gets better. We're going to start reading his quotes here in a second. Oh, by the way, he's the president of International Catholic Migration Commission.
You mean
You
the
know,
people
Catholic-
that need billions of dollars to enforce migration into the United States?
Yeah, and register them to vote and get them, taxpayer paid for healthcare. Catholic Charities. This is the guy who set that up. Well, he's the financial advisor to the Pope, mind you.
While he's all of these other advisors to industry that exploit all of these people that they're immigrating to all of these countries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's a member of the Migration Advisory Board for the International Organization for Migration. How many organizations can you be on?
Well, they're all
right.
doing the same thing. So he's just putting things underneath of them to control the entire network.
This is the open borders king. He's the guy who did it. Obviously, his positions were controversial, especially his calls for the EU to accept large numbers of migrants and his criticism of restrictive policies. He framed migration through economic necessity, human rights, and globalization. In 2014, I already got the Catholic migration. Okay. Did I get that already? Yeah, okay. So here's some of his quotes. You love this guy yet?
No.
He says, migration is not a problem to be solved. It is a reality to be managed. He says we need more migration to Europe, not less. Europe needs migrants to sustain its economy and its society. How's that working out for you, Europe? The days of hiding behind borders and fences are long gone. Another quote. The no borders people? There you have it. He says, migrants are not a burden. They're an asset. They create jobs, innovate, and contribute to growth. Where have we heard that before? From the left? He says, proximity doesn't define responsibility. Refugees are the responsibility of the world. No, I think your country's people are its responsibility, and other people can take care of themselves. He says, we must break through the myths about migration. Migration can become one of the greatest assets of the 21st century. I got a few more because it's worth reading this stuff. He says EU states should stop targeting highly skilled migrants and conversely placing restrictions on low-skilled migrants. Sutherland would also argue that migration is a crucial dynamic for economic growth, and that this is the case however difficult it may be to explain this to the citizens of those states. Who cares if you got screwed over? GDP went up. He says it's impossible to consider that the degree of homogeneity which is implied by the other argument can survive because states have to become more open states in terms of the people who inhabit them. He says, the European Union, in my view, should be doing its best to undermine any sense of our homogeneity and difference from others. This is where it comes from. A lot of people think that this is something called part of the Kalergi plan, this mass migration. Kalergi is an interesting guy, but you will find nowhere in his writings anything where he talked about blending all the races to be brown. Kalergi did not have great migration or replacement theory. This guy did. And I'm going to give you one final quote. I brought this one on. This one has to be shared on screen.
Okay.
We must use migration to turn the English people into a minority in England. This will allow us to undermine the identity of the native English and import a new majority that will end the very idea of England. This is critical for globalism to take hold of England. He said this in 2006. Pretty infuriating.
He's a pilgrim.
He's supposed to be supporting Anglo-American relations. But now he wants to wipe out the Anglo part of it for globalism. So when did it change and why?
Well, I would argue it didn't change, because if you go back to the origin, this arrangement of the expanding of the Commonwealth in order for it to be a globalist one world government has always been their agenda. He's just saying the quiet part out loud. The only way that you can coordinate a country is by destroying the country. And he's showing you the plan to destroy the country so that the few, the selected ones, are up here and we're all down here.
Now you understand why these globalists tried so hard to get rid of Donald Trump.
Yeah, and fought Brexit and everything else.
Yeah. Renee goes, Sutherland's checking off all the boxes. Yeah, he sure is. Oh, by the way, Renee corrected me last week. What was his name? Reed Hoffman. She was correct. He was a Marshall Scholar. I was wrong. She sent me the info. So good job. Appreciate the assist. What else about Sutherland? Well, he dies in 2018, so we can't yell at him anymore. If you go to the bottom of his wiki page, you'll see dozens of honors like knighthoods and honorary doctorates. He's been given all over the world because these guys love their credentials. I mean, it's like 30, list of like 30 of them, but one of them jumped off the page at me. Because in 1998, he received the David Rockefeller International Leadership Award.
Okay, that's hilarious.
I want to leave on a good note because people are standing up. We're seeing nationalists, populists being elected throughout South America, and they're doing really well in Europe. And as bad as we think France is, how much time do you have? I could play a video. I could just give you the summary.
Just give us a summary.
All right, this is a hat tip to Dr. Steve Turley. Go look at his YouTube page. But he just did one this week that I'm quoting what he said. He said, France just crossed a line, sending shockwaves to every Islamist network. Europe's nationalist movement, he talks about, you've seen the Swiss national burqa ban, Austria closing mosques and expelling over 60 Turkish imams, Hungary and Poland are refusing to accept Muslim migrants altogether. France has already closed 92 mosques, banned the abaya in schools, and they've reinforced the burqa ban. And then they came up with this thing, that's a Parliament bill. Dr. Turley introduces a term called entryism, which is, he calls it the deliberate, coordinated infiltration of Republican institutions. He's talking about France Republic. Local governments, public bodies, not to blow them up, but to reshape them quietly and legally from within. Sounds really familiar, right?
Like the Fabians infiltrate.
Yes. He calls it municipal Islamism. And it's not illegal. It's using the Republic's law against himself. So France's parliament took a stand. And surprisingly, Marine Le Pen's Populist National Party didn't play the major role. The one who pushed it through was a former Interior Minister, Bruno Retailleau, who's more of a center-right, which is probably more over here, Republican Party of France. He's the one that led the charge, probably because he's going to be running for president against Marine Le Pen in 2027. But what they did is they created a criminal offense against entryism. So if you organize a campaign to subvert a French institution, a school, a local council, a public body, you can go to prison for 5 years. Basically, the French are criminalizing the Muslim Brotherhood strategy, their core strategy. And they're telling Antonio Gramsci in his long march through the institutions, enough's enough.
Well, they may be doing that using the face of the Muslim Brotherhood, but that would be true of all NGOs.
Well, yeah, but that one's a little more insidious because it's about race replacement.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I think that's awesome. But it will have, because we know there's other nefarious entities out there that does the exact same thing.
Sure.
Like Soros.
Catholic Church being one of them.
Yeah.
Dr. Turley says that we're just starting to see some of the same stuff in the United States. He cites the fact that we do have something on the books called the Communist Control Act of 1954, although it's never been used and it's legally dubious. He points out that Trump's day one, term two, his executive order on DEI, which is doing a great job of wiping this stuff out of our institutions, although it's going to take forever because it's stuck in there like a tick. And I want to give you a final quote from Dr. Turley. He says, when a civilization wakes up, it doesn't just push back, it reclaims what it's lost. And we are seeing some of the pushback, people, but that's why we do this. How do you like our friend Peter Sutherland?
Quite the guy.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to have to make a few posts about him.
I could just put. You want me to do the thread for my notes and CC and copy you on it?
Sure.
But Seaweed Sally wants to know who took his place. Well, we could look it up right now. United Nations.
I think it's hilarious that he. I don't mean this the way it sounds, but I think it's probably very interesting that he died of what they refer to as a long illness in 2018. Donald Trump probably gave him a heart attack.
I mean, that really sums up so much. I'm looking at the Global Forum on Migration and Development and their website right now. Improve chairmanships.
Oh, he did have a heart attack. I just looked on his wiki page. He had a heart attack in 2016. That's probably definitely attributable to Donald Trump. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh at the death of somebody, but I don't think we lost anything with his death.
Okay, so I'm on the. Let me share real quick. No, nor do I. The only thing I feel like I lost is him seeing all his plans destroyed as this turn back towards nationalism comes back. All right, let me share this screen real quick so we can find out anything about that. Oops, I don't want a window. I want this one. Okay. I can barely read this website. This is the global whatever. Yeah, they're all over the place. You got these chairs.
And development.
Yeah. GFP chair in the office. Who is he? I don't know. Got a busy schedule though. Anything else interesting? Stakeholders. Oh, what's that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, stakeholder. I want to see what that is. I'm going to go to stakeholders, and you're going to see all the corporate partners. Yeah, there we go.
Blow that up.
A lot of it's a lot of NGOs. Partnerships, challenges, host, migrants, business mechanism. Oh, this is fascinating. After initial phase of exploration in 2012, the foundation for private sector engagement in the GFMD was laid during the Swedish and Turkish terms. And 2015, member states officially welcomed the establishment of the GFMB business mechanism or business advisory group on migration. We got to look into this. Got to do it.
Okay.
Did you go to the new screen? All right, that should do it. Private sector and the GFMD. Come on, just give me a list. I'm going to have to do some more research on that. I think we'll have some more fun with it.
Oh, dang. They have a group for mayors and youth. Oh, and civil society. Well, dang. That sounds like every organization that's trying to destroy the world.
Yeah. And they are dug in like ticks.
Wow. That's very interesting.
And Sutherland's, in his own words, wants to wipe out the English people and probably wants to wipe out, Americans too, to be replaced by something different.
Well, I think America is definitely in their target.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you cannot have one world government if there's a single nation state standing.
Huh. That's very interesting.
And I heard Markwayne Mullin on today announcing some he made a decent speech it was lukewarm, about cracking down on illegal voting. So see how that goes.
Okay, I do have to share this. Their meeting in 2021 has a topic, building back better.
Hi, Joe Biden.
So, wow. That's crazy. So we basically have the Democrat Party running on the GFMD's globalist agenda, like we didn't know that.
Well, Biden's all of his entire cabinet are, people that came from these same organizations, these same think tanks.
So here's their themes for that meeting: governance of labor, migration, and skilled migrants, gaps in migrant protection, irregular migration, building back better for migrants. That was their entire meeting agenda.
Outstanding.
Holy crap.
Peter Sutherland, I hope you're enjoying rotting in hell right now because you deserve it. All the pain and suffering you've caused. Hey, really interesting comment here. I didn't catch this one earlier. Making Sense says he persuaded the Irish government to issue a banking guarantee in 2008, which bailed out the city of London, saving them from the Celtic Tiger crash. And did I mention he was chairman of Goldman at the time? Well, we mentioned it, but yes, very much so. Good. I should have had that in there. That's an awesome data point. Didn't make it past my research filter. Well, shall we call it a day and go into our weekend nice and angry? Or you want to end on the high note that people are pushing back?
I think we ended on a high note because it's obvious that people are pushing back. And I think the more ammunition we give them, which is what the purpose of these shows are, the more we'll be able to push back effectively.
Do you agree with my strategy to have you go into this episode a little blind?
I'm fine with it.
I know. But now you understand where I'm coming from. There's just too many mic drops that I wanted your pure reaction. This is one of my favorite characters we've ever done.
Yeah.
My favorite, I mean, he's on the anti-Mount Rushmore.
Correct.
But nobody talks about it. You don't hear any, talking heads talking about how Peter Sutherland's, the father of globalization.
No. And I do think that it's a perfect illustration of the Wallenberg philosophy, to be without being seen. And the fact that he was married to the hip with the Wallenbergs makes perfect sense. These people operate out in the open, hiddenly, if that's even a word. They go to all of these meetings, they push all of these agendas, but they are not household names, and they should be. And that's what we're fixing.
And again, their version for the global one world government is tied at the hip of the multinational corporations. That, ladies and gentlemen, is fascism. The definition of fascism.
Yes.
And the only difference between that and what the Fabian socialists want is you won't have the corporations, so have the exact same control structure and the same result. It's why we fight so hard for individual liberty. You cannot let the corporations get control of your government, and they have. They took over our country, and it started on day one. The British mercantilist system, which is exactly what I'm describing, where you create these cartel systems favoring a few companies like the British East India Company. That is exactly what Hamilton set up when he became the first Treasury Secretary of the United States under Washington. That's what federally funded internal improvements always leads to. It's a slippery slope. A legitimate government only exists to preserve your God-given natural rights, defend your country, and to handle international affairs. Anything else, when they start putting their finger on the pulse of the economy, you get false market signals, you get crony capitalism, you get corruption, and eventually ends up where we are today, where our politicians are bought and sold, and we don't actually have local representation. You got to push back on this crap. Always go back to small government. Here endeth my sermon.
Okay, and we'll close on that note.
Cheers, everyone. Great weekend.
Thanks for everybody for being here. Take care.